Welcome back to Off the Chart Season 2 Gen Q Edition. This season, we're watching the L Word Generation Q with you, bringing you our unfiltered take on the new series reboot every Monday, because we still can't get over those LA lesbians. I'm Michelle Turingen, managing producer of Video at Extra, and if I had to choose between Honolulu and Kansas City, you'd find me at the gate for Kansas City 100%.
Really? Oh, okay. I'm Erica Lenti, senior editor at Extra, and my new OTP is Shane and her dog.
Obviously.
Yep, obviously.
So, final episode of the season. Erica, what did you think?
I thought it was actually a pretty good season finale. I don't know about you, but the obvious theme, I think, this time around was loss, because what's a season finale when we know the show has been renewed without turning everything into shambles? We kind of watch every character grapple with losing things that matter deeply to them. So Bette loses the election, Danny loses her relationship with her father in a certain sense, and with Sophie to a certain extent as well. Sophie loses Finley, Alice prepares to lose her show, Micah loses this facade that was his relationship with Jose, Shane loses Kiara and their baby, and so on. I will say, at least this leaves us with something interesting for season 2. The showrunners did a good job of making sure we'd actually stick around.
Oh my God, absolutely. I was just completely shook by this episode. It was heartbreaking reveal after heartbreaking reveal, and I thought I was going to have a heart attack.
Yeah, same.
So we've got a lot of heartache to process for this season finale. Okay, let's recap. Erica, tell us what's going on with Danny.
Okay, so we start off and it's election night, which is so exciting. I'm a politics junkie, so I was like, cool, my favorite interests, lesbians and politics, all in one. So we open with Danny. She's super frazzled. She's asking her staffers to keep refreshing the LA Registrar site kind of maniacally as the results pour in. So Bette wins some unexpected districts, which gets them really excited. At one point, Danny's like, I think we could really win. And Bette's like, yeah, that's the point. That's the point. So she ends up neck and neck with the opponent, Jeff Milner, but she loses in the end. So people who took our poll at Extra Magazine on Twitter, 53% of you thought she was going to win. So I'm really sorry to break your heart. But I do want to note 17.6% of you voted for President Porter 2032. So stay tuned. Maybe that'll be the next storyline.
She's still in the race.
So Danny seems kind of upset about the loss, but for the first time, she's free from work. So she has this genius idea of flying to Hawaii with Sophie and eloping, which is actually just really a terrible idea.
Horrible.
She tells her dad the plan, and he's still not Team Sophie. For once, I actually agree with him on this. Not because of his reasons, but I think that they're just a terrible couple. He says she's from a broken family, she won't provide stability, which seems like bullshit. But he also tells Danny that, oops, he was in cahoots with Milner the whole time. Danny's pretty pissed off, and she's very oblivious to everything else that's happening in her world. So we end with her waiting for Sophie at the airport, because cliffhangers, of course. Our L Word writers love their cliffhangers. So do you think that Danny has any idea that while she's been working this whole time, her fiancé has been slowly drifting away from her and everything's going to blow up?
This is what I think is really funny in how Danny is like Bette. Like, she's just enthralled in her own world, in her own work, in her own career, and has been taking Sophie for granted the entire season. I think she has no idea that Sophie has been running around doing all this stuff unbeknownst to her. And it's going to be a real awakening when whatever happens next happens.
I am going to push you back a little bit on that, because I think that Sophie was kind of being a hard ass on Danny for the last couple of episodes. I mean, even in this episode when Sophie's like, oh, well, I guess that was nice while it lasted, when Danny like came and said like, thank you for coming, it means so much. Like, girl, it's election night. Like, it's the most important night of this whole campaign. Like, it's the end of everything. And she's like, oh, Danny's not paying attention to me. And like, I will say Danny and Sophie are a bad match. I don't disagree. But I think that Sophie has been very hard on Danny. Like, she totally changed her perspective, however, silly of a storyline that was. Like, she went from working for Big Pharma, and now she's working for like the little guy. She's working for Bette Porter, and she's had a lot going on. And Sophie's just been like, yeah, pay attention to me.
So you think that Sophie is needy?
No, I think...
You think that her wanting her fiancé to pay attention to her is an unreasonable ask?
No, but I think that Sophie needs to be more understanding of her partner's career and what's happening. I think that like she's been super hard on her. That said, like I think there were clearly other issues that led Sophie to stray and led to all of this. And I don't disagree with Sophie in being pissed that her fiance wasn't there with her grandmother, which we will talk about because I have thoughts about that too.
Sure.
But I think that like, you know, cut Dani some slack. She's about to like lose everything in her life. She doesn't have a job. She's not going to have a fiance in like the next season. So
we'll see.
All right, let's talk about Sophie and Finley.
So Finley is bartending at Dana's on election night, and after a few minutes of awkward avoidance, Finley walks over to Sophie and asks her if they can talk. There's a very cute moment when they pass by Alice at the bar, and they both say, "Hey, boss," which is like a cute way for the show to show us how they're connecting our millennials to the OGs. But Finley tells Sophie that she knows that she can be a shitstorm, and she doesn't want to subject Sophie to her messed up drama. She knows that Sophie loves Dani, and she doesn't want to mess that up, and she just wants to forget that anything ever happened between them. They both agree that they're cool with each other, unconvincingly.
Sure.
At the end of the workday, Sophie corners Finley in the green room and updates Finley on her most recent wedding status, which is that she is eloping in Hawaii the next day. Finley is using all of her willpower to be super stoked for her pal, but Sophie wants Finley to come correct with the realness.
No, you don't want to like shove it down, just like way down and never talk about it.
My God. Is that what you're doing?
Of course that's what I'm doing. That's what everybody does. That's how you survive in the world.
Really?
Yes.
You know what? I cannot fucking stand you.
I know. Because I'm ridiculous.
No. You're not.
Don't look at me like that.
So unable to deny their feelings and with pending nuptials at stake, the two best friends finally hook up, and it's a pretty intense experience. We see Sophie crying in bed next to Dani afterwards, but we'll talk about that more later. Meanwhile, Finley goes over to Rebecca's house with this newfound clarity about how her actions hurt people like Sophie and like Rebecca, and all Finley wants to do now is atone for her many sins. Rebecca assures Finley that she's not a shitty person. She's a good person who just made a bad mistake. Later on, backstage at Alice's last show, Finley tells Sophie that she's actually leaving LA and moving back home to Missouri, and that her flight is tonight, conveniently at the same time as Sophie and Dani's flight to Hawaii. So, we asked you in our most recent Twitter poll, are you a Sophie and Finley shipper? And 40.5% of you said, I'm captain of this ship.
Okay, but also 37.8% of you said you jumped overboard. Let's not bias the results,
Of course. Now, this episode ends with a cliffhanger to end all cliffhangers. Dani is waiting at the airport for Sophie while Finley is on her way to Kansas City. We see Sophie running through the airport, and she finally makes it to her desired gate, but we don't know which gate she's at. So Christ, who is she going to pick? Is it going to be Dani or is it going to be Finley?
Okay, before we get into any of that, we need to back up. Is Sophie's grandma okay? Because we don't get any resolution to that storyline. We just see like Sophie's too busy making out with her friend to worry about her grandma who was like dying in the hospital last episode.
I mean, let's assume that she's fine and get on to the real question we're asking.
Okay.
Is it going to be Dani or is it going to be Finley? Now, I know what I think it's going to be.
It would be super weird if it was Dani. What I don't like about this is that it's so obviously open for fan service. It's like they're going to test, like, do people actually like Finley and Sophie? And if they do, then they'll make Sophie go to the gate. And if not, they'll make her go to Dani, or they'll make her hop on a flight somewhere else.
Interesting. That's an interesting take.
Yeah. But I had so many conflicting feelings about this.
Tell us all about your feelings.
So I'm definitely not a Finley shipper. Let's put that out there, okay? But I really liked the sex scene with them. And not in like a horny way. In like it was really like well done, and the actors did a really good job. I love the playfulness of it. I thought it was good, but I am not on board with Finley, okay?
So you're into it and you're not into it?
I just think that the actors did a really good job. I can respect the art for what it is.
Well, as captain of this ship, I loved it. For all the reasons you said, I thought it was beautifully acted. Yeah, well... So many feelings.
So many feelings.
We'll have to see.
I was like, when I was watching it, to borrow the Finley metaphor, like I felt really swirly on the inside. And I was like, what is happening? I don't like this. Okay, to something a little less swirly in the stomach, let's talk about Micah.
Oh, poor Micah. So he goes to Jose's art show to see a portrait that Jose has made of him. He finally sees it and he's moved by its beauty. And then Micah finally says, I love you to Jose. But their relationship bliss is short-lived when Micah meets Jose's husband.
What?
Scott. At the art show, Jose is pounding on Micah's door, pleading to explain himself, but Micah refuses to answer the door. So pretty brief for Micah's storyline here, but quite a reveal, quite a drop on us. Jose has a husband?
Yeah, I mean, I have so many qualms with this storyline. Like, we saw this guy for like a millisecond in the 3rd episode or something like that, and then they just brought him back and it's his husband. Like what happened to Micah's storyline?
Wait, back up. Can you give us more context about this?
Sure.
I don't remember seeing Scott at all.
Yeah, when in the 3rd episode, Jose cancels on Micah and there's a guy and he's like, I can't explain. There's like something happening. It's the husband.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. You forgot because Micah got so shafted in this season. Like, I was so disappointed with the way things worked out. And now, of course, we have another sad trans man because why not? So much lost opportunity for Micah. Justice for Micah since Kit is fucking dead and we can't have justice for Kit anymore.
I feel like they left the best reveal for last, again, to set up for season 2. So we'll see. Erica, why don't you tell us what's going on with Shane?
So Shane starts the episode receiving an ominous call from Kiara. So she jets from Bet's election party, and then she arrives at the hospital where Kiara says she's been spotting. Shane goes into full daddy protector mode, and she starts yelling at the poor receptionist that Kiara needs to see a doctor. So unfortunately, Kiara miscarries. She's really heartbroken about it. Shane still seems to be processing that, but Kiara accuses her of being relieved that they're not going to have a child. And they have this massive fight about children. Kiara wants to try again soon. Shane isn't really sure where she stands on that. And it ends with Kiara yelling at Shane.
That's what I thought.
You're never going to change, Shane.
Wait, hold on, I'm sorry.
No one is ever going to love you because you're incapable of loving anyone but your fucking self.
And then she tosses her wedding ring back at Shane, and poor little Shane crumples on the floor. But we end the episode with some redemption. Shane ends up finding a stray puppy on the side of the road, and she rescues it in her Jeep, which is everything. As our executive producer, Rachel Giza, said, it combined all of my interests in one scene.
I love that was your takeaway over this just heartbreaking miscarriage story, and your takeaway was a stray dog.
No, let's get into that, because I felt like the way that these events unraveled were quite out of character based on the past 7 episodes that we've seen. In the last episode in particular, we talked about how we thought they were like a really great couple because they communicated so well, and they had like a really strong bond and they were able to talk about these things. And Kiara didn't seem too concerned about Shane not feeling as prepared for the child and all of that. So it felt like a total 180. I can understand maybe that Kiara is going through a lot of crap and it's really traumatic to lose a child. So perhaps that's where it was coming from, but it felt really like everything was happening at once, and I didn't totally buy it based on where their relationship was at previously.
Well, I would like to point out that, as you said, of course, it's a very traumatic thing to happen. It's super upsetting. And maybe in Kiara's upset, she was unwilling to hear Shane finish her thought. Yeah. She's in the middle of explaining whether or not she'd be willing to try again. And before she can even get into it, Kiara just cuts her off. Yeah. So we don't actually know what Shane was about to say. Maybe she is all for it, and Kiara just didn't give her the opening to say that. And then it ends with our typical like Shane sad boy, all emo on the floor.
But you know what? She got a dog though, so she won't be alone. She'll have someone. I want to bring up the Twitter poll again. We asked if Shane would be a good parent, and 55% of you said, of course, remember Shay. You know who didn't remember Shay? The writers of this show. So I think that there's still more there. Shane is going to be a great dog mom, at least, moving forward.
Or dog daddy.
Or dog daddy, that's right. Okay, let's move on to Alice.
Alice's storyline starts with some much-needed comic relief this episode when she has an uncomfortable but hilarious conversation with Angie during the election night about her first time having sex. Post-election, Alice notes that Bet is handling her loss quite well, and Bet says that she gave it her all and that she managed to find a way to be herself during the entire campaign, which inspires Alice to do the same. So Alice comes into work, motivating her staff to produce the last show of the season that they really want to make and to go down swinging, even if it means that the show gets canceled. So Sophie books Roxane Gay as Alice's final guest for the season, and during the interview, Alice reveals her recent throuple breakup to Roxane, and then Nat emerges from the audience to proclaim her love for Alice and Alice alone, and that she'll fight for her. All the while, the cameras are still rolling. So, is this the viral moment that Alice's show needs to be on the air?
Probably.
Obviously.
Like, I could see this being on the Ellen show.
Oh my God, absolutely.
So, yeah.
So that tied up very nicely. But what I really want to ask is, Gigi is still the mother to Nat's children, so they will never not be a part of each other's lives. So now that Nat and Alice are back to being a monogamous couple, what do we think will happen to Gigi?
I don't know, but I don't want to lose Gigi because she's so
great.
She's great. She's funny. She's hot. Like, Nat is kind of boring, which we've established. So I hope Gigi doesn't go forever.
Well, we'll see what they do in season 2. So Erica, tell us what's going on with Bet Porter.
So as I mentioned earlier, the election doesn't go Bet's way. Though I will note that was a super close result. It was like 51% to 49%. Perhaps there's a recount that needs to be done. I'm just putting it out there. So even though she loses, she's wearing a very Bet outfit. It's like metallic or something. I just need to note that. But things are not too bad. In her loss, Milner has offered her a position heading up a task force on the opioid crisis, which is why Bet ran in the first place, because of the whole Kit connection. So she's happy until Danny shatters that illusion, telling her it's a setup for Milner to look like he's actually doing something for the crisis when he's really just profiting along with Papa Danny. So Bet loses her optimism about the whole thing and she kind of crashes. Angie finds her curled up on the couch, like crying and sulking, which is like really sad. But our favorite character ever brings her out on a hike to scream in a very great throwback to Bet's release post-Silent Retreat in season 3. Love it. On the hike, Angie ends up meeting a dog, the second dog of this episode, very important, whose owner is this hot reporter named Maya, who's been covering the election. We saw her earlier in the episode at the campaign party. You best believe Bet's going for that. So I want to talk again. I know we've talked so much about it, but Bet and Angie, pure as hell, beautiful everything. I want to really talk about that awkward sex talk they had while hiking. I thought it was so great and wholesome.
Well, look, I'm not going to tell you that you're too young or you're not ready or anything like that. That's great. Yeah, because that would be pointless, right? But I will say that sex is supposed to feel good.
Oh my God, Mom.
Yeah, for both of you.
Okay.
Yeah, so.
It's cute, and it's what I imagine Angie's conversation with Bet about sex would be like as opposed to Tina, so I thought that was very cute. I thought it was also interesting that like Angie confesses to Bet that she had always hoped somewhere deep inside that her and Mama T, Tina, would like get back together, which I think echoes like a lot of our feelings, just like general fans felt the same way. So to address that through Angie's perspective was very sweet.
Yeah, and I almost feel like it leaves the door open still for Tibet in season 2. Like if Laurel Hulleman and her painting career IRL doesn't get in the way of filming. But, it's just important to remember, Shell, sex needs to feel good for the both of you.
Thanks for that hot tip. Okay, it's time for our superlatives round. Each week, we'll crown our favorite moments from the episode. It's like reading through your high school yearbook all over again, but maybe just a little queerer. Erica?
Okay, honorable mention for best shoehorning of cute dogs into a script goes to Marja Lewis Ryan and co. for getting not one, but 2 doggies into the plot this episode. You all know the way to this, lesbians are. But I want to honor someone who has kept it real since episode 1. So Best Character of the Season award goes to Angie Porter Kennard, who has truly been a beacon in what has sometimes been a depressing dumpster fire. Angie is loyal to her moms. She's discovering herself. She's like an incredible depiction of a complex queer teenager. She's such a good kid. Like,
she really is.
I just love watching her. So please, more Angie for season 2. Prayer hands emoji.
APK.
Okay, how about you?
So my honorable mention for best online dating reaction goes to Danny. Alice is on Tinder at Dana's and asks Danny for her opinion on a person that has come up on her app, to which Danny says, "Yeah, I dated her. The birds were a whole thing.
I kind of wish that Alice would go on a date with the bird girl.
Oh, dear. But I'm crowning best sex scene of the entire season to my new favorite ship, #Sinley, Sophie and Finley in the green room at work. It starts out with a lot of tension, and then they succumb to their feelings, and it's very playful, but it's also terrifying, and it's intimate, and it's super fucking intense. Is this a bad idea? Of course it is.
Yep.
But does it make for great drama? Absolutely it does. So congratulations to the showrunners. I'm officially hooked and I'm dying for season 2.
Oh God, I hate admitting that I liked it. But I liked it. Oh, what is happening to me?
That's it for this episode, and that's it for the L Word Generation Q Season 1. We couldn't get enough of Gen Q, and if you're like us and want to hear more analysis of our favorite LA lesbians, let us know on Twitter at Extra Magazine, or drop us a comment on YouTube. Who knows, maybe we'll have some extra episodes for you. In the meantime, for more great L Word content, check out extramagazine.com. I'm Michelle Turingen.
And I'm Erica Lenti.
Off the Chart Generation Q is produced by Michelle Turingen, our executive producer is Rachel Giza, and our music is by Kid Kulit. If you like what you're hearing, please review us on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. And as always, feel free to get in touch with us on Twitter at Extra Magazine. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Until next time.
No, you don't want to like shove it down, just like way down and never talk about it.
Oh my God. Is that what you're doing?
Of course that's what I'm doing. That's what everybody does. That's how you survive in the world.